Young people in China are seeking help from the CIA to help them fight against President Xi's leadership. In recent weeks, the American Central Intelligence Agency has recruited many young people who have become discontent with Xi's leadership through social media. On social platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Telegram, the agency has sent out detailed videos to individuals on how they can secure contact and begin work for the CIA. In this video, we're going to take a look at this growing network and talk about why the youth are fed up with Xi and his regime. Now, CCP bots are constantly under our videos, leaving negative comments and downvoting our content. We still want to be able to give you guys informative content, but we need your help. Please, give this video a like and even a comment, and share it with your friends. Right, let's get into today's discussion. Things have gotten really desperate for the Chinese youth, and the US has swooped in to help. The initiative has been driven by CIA Deputy Director David Cohen, who has spoken about how there are many young people who have important information that could really be helpful for the ongoing battle between China and America. These young people have chosen to turn to America because they have seen the state of their country under Xi's administration, and they decided that something has to be done to stop him. The instructional videos that have been circulating can be found on the dark web, and there are versions of them in Mandarin, Corsi, and Korean. In one of these videos, there are simple instructions directing the potential recruits to use secure virtual private networks to access the CIA website, so that they're not tracked by China's surveillance. The exercise of recruitment has been very top secret, as the CIA has to work pretty hard to get around many of these restrictions imposed on media in China. This is because many young people are afraid of stepping up and then facing the consequences. Countries like China and Russia are heavy on surveillance and censorship, and they have blocked access to US platforms like Facebook because they've decided that they are unfavorable to the government. To ensure that these brave individuals do not receive punishment, the CIA process protects the identity of the people and simply asks for locations and contact details that will not lead directly to their true identities. CIA experts who are in China are also part of the recruitment process and have been helping to make sure that the recruits are assisted properly. Commenting on the process, CIA Director Cohen said, "There are plenty of people who have access to information who are disaffected by the Xi regime in China. You got people inside who are seeing what's happening, and for lots of different motivations, fundamentally do not like the direction that Xi is taking the country, and understand that there's a path to helping their own country by working with us." As expected, China is not happy with these recruitments, and they think they are one big misinformation campaign that is trying to discredit China's leadership. Liu Pengyu, a Chinese embassy spokesperson, explained that these attempts to turn the Chinese people against the Chinese Communist Party were silly and would probably fail. This is probably farther from the truth considering the success that the CIA has had with this campaign in Russia. The CIA worked on a similar program in 2022 after the invasion of Ukraine. Many young people were unhappy with Putin's aggression and chose to join the effort to fight. Russian-language videos were also released on the dark web, and people were instructed to contact the CIA if they had any information. According to a CIA spokesperson, the Russian campaign was a success, and the effort has moved to China, North Korea, and Iran. No amount of ridicule by the Chinese government will take away from the reality on the ground. The youth are unhappy, and they are looking for outside solutions. Things have to be really bad in your country for you to turn to the nation's arch-enemy for support, right? The common thread for citizens who turn to other nations for help is a sense of helplessness. In Russia, when people were coming with information on Russian intelligence, it was because they feared what Putin's aggression would do to the country. The problem has escalated till this point, but it has been clear for a very long time that the Chinese youth are unhappy. The first place that people turned to voice their frustration was social media. Many keywords and phrases have become popular on certain social media sites as the Gen Z population has decided to speak up against the worsening conditions in the country. The first one we will talk about is the popular phrase "tangping," which means to lie flat. The phrase was used to express their frustration at the fact that young people would work very hard and try to make it, but their efforts were all in vain. Chinese culture has always been one that pushes hard work down its people's throats, and young people have begun to fight against this. One user on a discussion group from Tiba posted sarcastically saying, "Lying flat is my wise movement. Only by lying down can humans become the measure of all things." The meme spread like wildfire, and the youth began to think about it as a sort of spiritual movement. This new ideology that a lot of youths follow is one of not overworking themselves and choosing to be content with small victories. The problem is a lot of young Chinese people feel like things were a lot better for their parents. And even though hard work was still a thing, there were opportunities back then for the older generations. Having witnessed how their parents have succeeded and managed to create wealth, it has been frustrating for this demographic of people to see their hard work give them very little in return. The next phrase that became popular after Tangping was Bailan. Bailan was a step up from Tangping because it encouraged the youth to rot and let things be. According to Professor Yu Hai from the Department of Sociology at Fudan University in Shanghai, lying flat is neutral, but let it rot is harmful because it pushes people to give up. He explains that phrases like those are coping mechanisms for the youth, and it helps them deal with their disappointment at the government. Social media movements like this may have seemed harmless at first, but now we're witnessing rebellion as the Chinese youth turn to the CIA to fix their country. At this stage, young people have nothing to lose. The income inequality in China is one of the highest in the world. China's youth unemployment rate places it at number 6 in the rankings at 21.3%. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the jobless rate for young people between the ages of 16 and 24 has risen to 18.8% in August. China's urban unemployment rate across all age categories has risen from 5.3% in August compared to a 5.2% rise in July. The term that has been used to describe the hard-working young individuals struggling to make it in China is the ant tribe. This group of people are tenacious and educated, but they are stuck in low-paying, temporary jobs. Lian Si, who coined the term in 2009, used it to explain that the effect of the government's failures was also psychological and emotional. This has left most young people feeling anxious, depressed, and hopeless. Some of these young people have even begun to refer to themselves as full-time children. This group of people lacks financial independence and relies on their parents to survive. This is the reality for Joy Jung, who is a 23-year-old graduate. In an interview with BBC, she says that when she finished school, her father was proud of her because he believed that her education would afford her a better life and income. The reality for her was that the first few months after graduation, she had already worked 5 jobs. She explains that the problem is that there are a lot of jobs, but they pay peanuts. Out of Joy's class of 32 students, only a third of them have gotten full-time jobs. To make ends meet, Joy started off as a tour guide for a panda park. From there, she began to sell hot drinks and then landed a job interning at a kindergarten. Currently, Joy sells educational material, which is a far cry from what her dream job was. Joy explains what the reality is for a lot of graduates, stating, "These jobs don't have good prospects for your future. They offer low salaries and you are easily replaceable. That's why most people would rather stay at home." Even those who have worked hard to get really good degrees are struggling. Another recent graduate who studied software engineering told the BBC that although his skills were hotly sought after, it was not easy to find a job. A lot of the struggles that are being experienced by the youth in China can be traced back to bad policy decisions that have been made by Xi. But first, recently we crossed 1 million subscribers. Ever since then, we have been flooded with emails asking us questions and asking for advice about growing a channel on YouTube. Even though we try our best to reply to every single email, sometimes these take up a little bit too much time. Or, they ask the same questions that we've answered before. That's why we've decided to put all of our YouTube advice into one email bootcamp for completely free. So, if you are someone who's interested in starting your own YouTube channel, you can get our email bootcamp by clicking on the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on the screen. Okay, let's get back to the video. Xi's regime has been about taking wealth from the select few and making it state-controlled. His economic model is one that is focused on the state and then branches out to institutions and people. For instance, let us talk about the banning of the private tutoring industry in China. Under this ban, private tutoring companies had to become non-profit organizations, and tutoring businesses were prohibited from listing on the stock market or raising capital from overseas. The main reason for the crackdown on the private tutoring business was to allow students to establish a work-life balance. To push against the intense tutoring culture, the ban also stopped online tutoring for children under the age of 6 and all tutoring related to core school subjects during weekends and holidays. Other nationalistic goals were at play as well, as the government wanted to be able to control education by banning foreign curricula and foreign teachers. The ban was known as the Double Reductions Policy, and its aim was to reduce pressure on households and relax education standards. What Xi did not realize was that this decision wiped out an entire employment sector largely populated by young, vibrant graduates. The private tutoring space was a $100 billion business, and the crackdown has wiped it out. Stock prices for most of the listed tutoring companies went down by over 90%, and more than 200,000 layoffs were reported. Christina Zhu, an economist at Moody's Analytics, explained that the decision contributed to the rising youth unemployment rate, and many college graduates who relied on the education sector for jobs were stranded. The education sector accounts for 17% of jobs for recent graduates, and this means that many people were impacted. Many blamed Xi for this decision, as they felt that he did not think it through entirely or consider the effect of such a sweeping change. And unfortunately, this was not the only sector that suffered under Xi's new policies. Xi did not like the idea of wealthy people thriving individually, so he decided to increase the state's reach in many lucrative private sectors. The tech and real estate sectors were also subject to harsh policies that increased the unemployment rate substantially. Xi's goal in this aspect was to promote common prosperity, but the negative impact of the policy meant that he completely missed the mark. Now, the major blunder was that the tech industry was one of the best paying in the country, with government statistics showing that its salaries are about 80% above the national average. The sector also employed over 200 million people, which is about a quarter of the country's entire workforce. Under Xi's new strategy, many big-time companies like Alibaba were fined for abuse of market dominance, and companies were delisted on the stock exchange. Alibaba had to cut more than 15% of its total workforce this year, which was about 39,000 workers, while Tencent, another giant, shed about 15% of its staff. According to Logo, one of China's largest tech recruitment websites, 2.76 million tech employees left their jobs in March of 2022. The survey also showed that 57% of Chinese companies had to lay off between 10 to 50% of their workforce. These layoffs had a big impact on a lot of young and hopeful graduates who were looking for opportunities in the world of education and technology. The accumulated effects of these policies was that the young people began to lose confidence in Xi's leadership. This is because, time and time again, he was showing them that he was not concerned with their quality of life. The failing economy, still suffering from the effects of COVID-19, had nothing to offer the young people. Because of this, many young people in their 20s and 30s had to cut down on their spending and save money more frequently. Even those who had been lucky enough not to be laid off have not had it easy. Many young people have had to take pay cuts, especially in the retail and e-commerce sectors. Since 2022, the average salary in 38 major Chinese cities has fallen by 1%. Things have gotten so bad that people are surviving on $1.45 dinners. One young woman became famous on the popular streaming site Bilibili for making videos with ideas for 10 yuan dinners, while challenges like live off of 1,600 yuan, about $226, a month, are common, even in cities like Shanghai, where the wealthier part of the Chinese population lives. On top of failing to create an ideal economic environment for the youth to flourish, Xi has not made things easier for himself due to his dictatorial style of leadership that has tried to silence the youth. Even US President Biden referred to Xi as a dictator when he commented about a suspicious Chinese spy balloon that was found in the US airspace earlier this year. Biden was commenting on Xi's embarrassment about not knowing about the secret operation, stating, "That's a great embarrassment for dictators. When they don't know what happened, that wasn't supposed to be going where it was. It was blown off course." In 2013, Xi Jinping ascended to power, and he is serving his third presidential term. The first thing Xi did was consolidate his power as president by removing the two-term limit for the presidency. Surprisingly and suspiciously, there was no pushback from the National People's Congress. Many people have said that Xi has completely taken control of the CCP, and many have labeled it the Xi-CP. To further strengthen his hold on power, Xi has chosen to silence internal opposition by replacing those members of Congress with his protégés. His control-obsessed method of leadership has undermined democracy as a whole, and his one-party system silences all opposition. Human rights groups and academics call his rule a dictatorship, because it has all the hallmarks of one: a captured judiciary, controlled media propaganda, and censorship of the free media. Xi has also applied a social credit system and surveillance of online content to make sure that he is monitoring his citizens' behavior. Under his leadership, people who have chosen to openly criticize him online are censored and detained to stop them from speaking. Another policy that reflects his dictatorship and made him even more unpopular with the youth was his zero-COVID strategy. Xi was attempting to save lives, but the strictness only fueled unemployment and endangered the citizens even more. In response to the deadly coronavirus, 21 million residents were restricted to their homes, and the country enforced its zero-COVID policy. There were very strict measures placed, and only one person from a household could be sent out to buy groceries. All businesses were shut down, except for supermarkets, pharmacies, and hospitals. Restaurant dining was also closed, and only takeout was allowed. The policy took it as far as punishing panicked citizens for expressing their opinion. One woman, identified as She, posted some comments on social media and was told that her provocative comments had caused problems, and she was fined and detained for 15 days. This arbitrary enforcement of the policy caused a lot of frustration with the public, especially the youth, who grew tired of the daily restrictions on their lives. As the virus got better and other countries eased their restrictions in response, China still chose to continue its harsh response. China's delay in phasing out its zero-COVID policy was not taken very well. As we can see, Xi's failure as a policymaker and his harsh style of leadership placed a wedge between him and the Chinese youth. However, the youth did not immediately jump to the CIA and tried to express their dissatisfaction with the issues in the country to the government. The most notable protests began against the strict COVID-19 measures. Shanghai was one of the first cities to begin its protest, with the youth beginning to shout, "Freedom, we want freedom, end lockdowns." China's response to the protests only worsened the situation. During the protests, many police officers in Beijing and Shanghai were put on patrol and checking phones with VPNs and the Telegram app, which was being used by weekend protesters and residents. This response made Xi seem out of touch with the reality of the protesters. His extreme response to COVID took away a lot of opportunities for young people and separated them from their families. After this period, Xi did not attempt to restore the economic status quo, and the effects of COVID are still impacting livelihoods to this day. What has further worsened the situation for Xi is the decision he made to turn independent colleges into vocational schools. The decision led to protests in 4 independent colleges in provinces across China, with reports that the fights even got physical. Many young people have felt that university degrees are more prestigious than the vocational ones, and the change was going to affect their chances in the already competitive job market. What further aggravated the situation for most young people was that Xi had not even attempted to create job opportunities for the 8 million graduates expected to come out of university. After receiving backlash for protests and no change, the Chinese youth had exhausted all their efforts and are now resorting to extreme measures. As an intelligence unit, the CIA will be able to take the valuable information given and use it to put pressure on Xi's authoritarian regime. This widespread recruitment is not an aggravation, but rather a response to China's continued espionage in the US. The spy war between America and China has been going on for years. China has been known to use planted spies within the US government to access important information on government decisions, foreign relations, and military secrets. China has used everything from balloons to cell phone towers, but the most popular type of espionage has been the use of Chinese expatriates. According to a report by CNN, Beijing has been turning to Chinese scientists, business people, and even students in the US to get information about everything happening within the US intelligence network. So, China's intelligence structures are slightly different than the US model. Intelligence activities fall under the People's Liberation Army and its civilian agency known as the Ministry of State Security. Established in 1983, the Ministry of State Security has the duty to oversee intelligence and counterintelligence, both within China and overseas. In terms of comparison, many have said that it's sort of like a combination between the CIA and the FBI. As China's expansion continues and it looks to acquire more territory, its surveillance and intelligence operations will definitely double. The CIA's breakthrough with the Chinese youth has come as a surprise because of how difficult it has been for the US to gather intelligence under Xi's leadership. Since he came into power, there has been an increased focus on security, which is essentially just the state monitoring its citizens, especially online. What has made the US especially wary about its intelligence work in China was the infamous unmasking of its intelligence informants in China. Between 2010 and 2012, China killed and imprisoned more than 20 CIA sources. The scariest part of it all is that the origins of the breach could not be identified. Investigations stood on two theories. One, where a spy in the CIA betrayed the information, or one where a Chinese hacker managed to hack into the system and access top-secret CIA documents that crippled the system. To send a message to Washington and the rest of the spies in China, one of the spies was gruesomely shot and killed in front of a government building.
To be one of the CIA's worst failures in recent history.
The Foreign Policy magazine article entitled "Botched CIA Communication System Helped Blow Cover of Chinese Agents" takes a look at how Chinese authorities were able to infiltrate the CIA's network of secret informants.
It also reveals the shocking number of spies who were killed while working in the communist country.
After 2013, the US wiped out any potential leaks and breakdown in its networks and has been trying to rebuild its spy networks in China. Then, in 2018, the case flung wide open when former CIA officer Jerry Chun-Shing Lee was caught retaining classified information that led to the dismantling of more of the CIA's network of informants in China. According to the investigation, Lee was contacted by Chinese intelligence agents in 2010 when they offered him money and promised to take care of him for life if he gave them the information he needed. Next, hundreds of thousands of dollars were deposited into his Hong Kong bank account, and he began to spill CIA secrets. FBI investigations uncovered a USB drive that contained a document containing information about all CIA activities. The search also turned up a daily planner and address book that notes all the intelligence provided by the CIA agents, including their true identities, locations, and phone numbers. When Lee was first investigated, he denied knowing about the USB drive and stated that he had never given any information to any Chinese agents. Within the US system, there had been many high-profile Chinese spies who have been caught working for the Chinese government. The most recent instance took place in New York, where former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Linda's son, was arrested and charged with acting as a Chinese agent during her time in government. Her list of offenses was long, and her charges included violating and conspiring to violate the Foreign Agents Registrations Act, visa fraud, alien smuggling, and money laundering conspiracy. Under her role in the New York government, Sun furthered the Chinese agenda. The damage she did was extensive, including blocking meetings with Taiwanese officials during her time under Governor Andrew Cuomo and her influence in speechwriting. According to the prosecution, Sun and her husband operated over 80 different messaging accounts. In one of the WeChat messages, Sun told a Chinese official, "I've done many things to make the relationship flourish," referring to the work she had done for the Chinese government. Xi's reign in China has left a sour taste in the mouths of one of the most important demographics, the youth. Tired of suffering under economic reforms that do not benefit them, and being forced to work extremely hard for very little, the Chinese youth have decided to stand up. The movement against Xi began under social media movements like Bailan and Tangping, but now the efforts have reached new heights. Tired of protesting and suffering backlash for it, the Chinese youth have chosen to ally with the CIA to try to take down their president. The CIA recruitment process has been successful in Russia, and it'll probably yield many positive results in China as well.